hard to believe that we have been on the farm for a little over a year now, and I thought I would give you kind of a little tour and update on all the things that we've done on the farm in the last year. It's kind of crazy to believe. Sometimes I feel like we've gotten so much stuff done, and other times I look at it and think we have so much to do. And I think that's one of the hardest part about owning property is you have all these dreams and things you want to do, but there's always more to get done. And so I'm just going to take you through kind of what we've done and maybe some plans that we have in the future of what we're going to do. So this is mostly just an outdoor tour because we really haven't done much inside. All of our focus has been outside thus far because that was the reason why we moved here, was for the outdoors. One thing we had to have done was remove a beautiful over 200-year-old oak tree and an ash tree because they were dangerous. The oak tree had huge limbs that were going over the pergola area, and when we checked on the trees, it was actually completely hollow on the inside, and so it was going to be losing large limbs and was going to be really dangerous. So we had to remove those, which was so sad because that was my favorite tree. I called it the magical fairy tree because it was just like huge and beautiful and the leaves were gigantic. We did have to remove it, and now it looks like a hobbit tree. But it has opened up the space quite a bit. The biggest projects we have this year was the garden. One of the reasons we wanted to have a homestead in the first place was to be able to grow as much food as possible on our own land. When we first moved in, I shared a tour of what it looked like when we moved in, and it was very overgrown. Pretty much everything was, but it was super overgrown, and all the fencing was falling down. It just looked pretty terrible, and so we spent a good chunk of the springtime tearing it all out, taking out all the dirt, taking out wire that was grown into the garden beds, like they had layered plastic and then wire, and I had to dig it all up. We built new beds, added new posts, new fencing, new gates, and which actually was fun. We were trying to use as much as we could because it was not a cheap project by any means. I went out in our forest and found the gate. Then we also found the farm gate from a different area on the farm. And honestly, it has turned out better than I could have ever imagined. There are still some projects we need to do with it. It will probably always be changing and evolving. We hope to get a greenhouse one day, but I am seriously thrilled with how it turned out. We got so much produce. I grew so many things that I could never grow before due to space. And in our last house, I have a YouTube video on our last house. We could barely grow anything because of the shade and all the pines. So I probably grew like 10 times the amount of stuff I've ever grown before. And it was really fun. My kids thoroughly enjoyed it. And I actually got tomatoes this year. Normally my kids eat them all before I can even get them. So next year, the plan is to grow more, to learn more, to grow different varieties of things that we haven't, and just to maintain really is what the plan is. In the garden this year, we grew such a variety of things between lettuces and snap peas, tomatoes, a variety of different types of tomatoes, cabbages and kale. What else did we grow? Brussels sprouts. We had honey nut squash and butternut squash, beans. There's so many things. And we had success in so much stuff. We also had a lot of failures, but I'm just really happy that we got it done and that we got to reap the benefits of all the hard work. Another thing that we learned and is super helpful is that when we went into this, we didn't realize how much help we were going to need. And I'm super thankful for all of our friends and family, neighbors that came to help us. When we were building the garden, we decided we would just till up everything because it was all grass and weeds and all this stuff. So someone my husband works with offered to come over and till the land for us for free. And so that was super helpful. We had so many people come to help us put fences in, move chicken coops, just so many things. Or the biggest lesson we learned this year, the hardest lesson that we learned this year, was the goats. In that area, we cleared it out. There was an old greenhouse that we tore down because the goats ended up learning how to get into it. One of our goats kept hurting herself in it and getting cut, and so we tore it down. We had to build fencing over and over and over again because goats can get through everything. And the biggest lesson I think I learned was just how hard it is. And if you know the story, we bought a mom and a baby, and within the first 2 weeks of owning the baby, she all of a sudden got sick. And so I read all the things that could be with her. I tried to treat her. I was talking to the people we bought her from of what it could be. She finally seemed like she was doing better. Within an hour, all of a sudden she looked terrible. We had to rush her to the university nearby and learned that she actually had coccidia, which is a type of parasite that is normal in older goats. And they have it, if they have it, they always have it, but it can kill babies. And so she had recently been weaned, and so she died because she had been weaned and was never dewormed for it, and we didn't know. The previous people never told us. So then after she passed away, we had a really hard decision to make. You cannot just keep one goat. And so we either had to get rid of our goat or we had to buy new goats. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I decided let's just get more goats because I really wanted goats. We literally bought them within like a month of moving here. And we wound up buying more goats who were very sweet. So the first goat we got was a really hard goat, like just not a very good personality. It was very skittish. It took her about 6 months for her to actually like me, or more. And it was all because she had a surprise baby that we didn't know. They said she might be pregnant, but we don't know. She never really got any bigger. She kind of stayed the same size. And then one morning I went out there and there was the cutest little baby. It was just a really hard time. And so after owning them for probably about 9 months, we realized that it was time to move on. We weren't going to be able to get milk like we wanted to anytime soon because we don't have a buck and we didn't have a place we could rent a buck from. And I could just tell it wasn't working at the time. And so we ended up rehoming them. We found a really awesome place for them to go where they were going to be milking them, and they had bucks, and so it worked out really well. It was very sad for all of us. We loved them. Even after all the trouble that we got with Rita, after she had the baby, she really learned to trust us and love us, and ended up being really sweet. And so it was a really hard time, but it was a really hard lesson that I'm glad that we learned. And so we plan on getting more animals whenever we feel ready and whenever we feel like the time is right. So one thing that I'm super proud of that we learned this year, and it really wasn't me at all, it was my husband. If you know him, so in our last house, I was the one who did like all of the handy projects and redid all the rooms and whatever. And when we moved here, I think he learned pretty quickly that I cannot take all this stuff on my own. I don't have the physical strength like he does to be able to do it. And he learned so much, and it's been really amazing to watch. So one of the things he built was a chicken tractor. So we had this old falling down shed in our orchard, and I saw the shape of it. It was kind of an A-frame, and I said, I think we can make this into a chicken tractor. I sent him some pictures, and he kind of just went with it. We tore down the bottom half, and then he made the rest into a chicken tractor, and it has been wonderful. It's worked so well for us, and it's really cut down on our feed costs. So I'm hoping next year we'll be able to do like meat chickens or even more laying chickens and be able to do that moving coop, because it's super handy and really healthy for them, and it cuts down on the feed costs a ton. And honestly, even though I did most of the garden inside, him and some friends are the ones who did almost all of the fencing around the garden. And so he has just taken on so many projects, and I've never seen him so happy with power tools before. In the last year, we have done a ton of cooking and baking and learning new skills. One of the skills I always wanted to learn but was really intimidating was canning. I had someone teach me a few years ago, and it didn't turn out very well. So I was just really intimidated by it. And so this year was going to be the year that I learned. And I ended up canning a bunch of stuff. In that canning a bunch of stuff, there was also a lot of failures, but that's okay. We made strawberry jam out of organic strawberries that we picked from a local farm. We made dilly beans. I canned plums a couple different ways from our plum trees. We canned pickles that turned out terrible, like unedible for whatever reason. Turned out super salty and you can't eat them. But we learned and tried. and the biggest success was applesauce. And I canned 15 quarts of applesauce and 15 pints of applesauce, and that's been the absolute favorite. The kids and my husband just absolutely love it. It does feel like a labor of love because it takes quite a long time to make applesauce, and I don't really like it. So it's my way of showing my family how much I love them. And so this next year, my big goal is learning how to pressure can. I already got a pressure canner, and so that way I can can more things that are low acid, and also learn how to can tomato sauce because it was also intimidating and I didn't feel like I could really learn another thing. So one more big change that happened this last year that we prayed for a long time for was that in May we are expecting baby number 3. And so one of the reasons why we also got rid of the goats. And so it's a really exciting time for our family, and we're really excited for how the homestead's going to grow next year. But I really hope you enjoyed this tour of our homestead over the last year. There's probably been so many more projects that I can't even think of. So much has changed, and we hope to continue to work on it and develop it and grow as much as we possibly can over the next year. Although I'll have a newborn, so it might be a little bit more challenging. Make sure to come by. I have a lot more videos coming up, and so just make sure to stop by and see what kind of projects and things that we are working on.